Sometime before dawn in 12th century Paris, a man walks through the narrow streets, shouting. He is not selling bread. He is not warning of fire. He is announcing that the public baths are hot and ready. You have probably heard that medieval people never bathed, that they reeked, lived in filth, and went their whole lives without touching water. But the tax records of Paris in 1292 listed over 30 licensed public bathhouses, regulated by a guild that set rules about hours, entry, and services. Across the Thames from London, you could pick from 18 hot baths in Southwark alone. And a 9th century biographer who spent 23 years at Charlemagne's court described pool-sized baths where over 100 people soaked together. Nobles, bodyguards, and the emperor's own sons. The medieval world did not avoid water. It built an industry around it, complete with medical procedures, guild regulations, and hygiene manuals written in rhyming Latin verse. Here is how medieval people actually bathed, what happened inside those bathhouses, and why all of it vanished. Those 30-plus bathhouses in Paris were not some underground operation. They were licensed businesses governed by a guild with formal rules written down in the city's trade regulations. The same book that covered bakers and butchers. The guild spelled it out. No bathhouse could shelter prostitutes, lepers, or vagabonds. No one could heat the baths on Sunday. And here is the one that tells you just how popular these places were. No bathhouse keeper could send criers into the streets before daybreak, because people would actually get up and rush out in the dark to get there. The city had to regulate enthusiasm for bathing. Paris was not unusual. In Southwark, just across the Thames from London, those 18 hot baths were so well known they had a nickname: the Stews. In German-speaking lands, public bathhouses were everywhere. The city of Kulmbach had one operating by 1398, with an L-shaped corridor leading to changing rooms, wooden benches, and a boiler room that piped warm water for pre-bath showers. In Nuremberg, archaeologists found the remains of a bathhouse on Ehrerstrasse. The Bavarian town of Trockau had 2 bathhouses running simultaneously in 1472, a town most people today could not find on a map. And across Central Europe, streets still carry the name Badstrasse, Bath Street, marking where these buildings once stood. In smaller towns and villages, bathhouse owners got creative. Some built their operations next to the local bakery because the ovens were already producing heat. Why waste it? The bathhouse could tap into that warmth to heat its water. It was efficient, practical, and it tells you something important. Bathing was not a luxury. It was infrastructure. Towns planned for it the way they planned for bread. Now, think about what this means. This is a world without plumbing, without pumps, without gas lines. Every drop of hot water had to be hauled, heated over wood fires, and carried to the tubs by hand. Running a bathhouse required firewood, labor, copper kettles, drainage, and constant maintenance. Cities did not invest in all of that because a few nobles wanted a soak. They did it because ordinary people, workers, tradespeople, their families, expected to bathe regularly. And the towns that served them built the systems to make it happen. But washing was only part of what went on inside those walls. Because a medieval bathhouse offered a lot more than hot water. The experience started before you even touched water. In many German-speaking towns, an attendant poured warm water over your body from a boiler next door while beating your skin with birch twigs to get the blood flowing. Then you moved into the steam room, a wood-paneled chamber with benches where you sweated alongside your neighbors. And then came the part that might surprise you: the barber surgeon. The bathhouse barber was a medical practitioner. After your skin was warm and your pores were open, he would perform wet cupping, small cuts on the skin, then heated glass cups placed over them to draw out what medieval medicine called bad blood. The logic came straight from humoral theory. The body held 4 humors: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile. And they needed to stay in balance. A good sweat followed by cupping was considered genuine health care. The same barber might also pull a tooth, set a broken bone, dress a wound, or shave your beard. And the red and white striped pole that still hangs outside barbershops today? It traces back to this tradition. Red for blood, white for the bandages wrapped around the arm after bloodletting. But bathhouses were more than clinics. They were social centers. Some served food and drink. Others offered live entertainment. Competing businesses in medieval towns actually complained that bathhouse owners were stealing their customers by turning a simple wash into an evening out. Men and women bathed together in many places, and the church tried to push back. A 13th century penitential warned that anyone who bathed naked with their spouse and other women should fast for 3 days on bread and water. In practice, it made little difference. People kept going. Now imagine you are not a tradesman in Paris or a villager in Bavaria. You are the most powerful ruler in Europe. In the early 9th century, a scholar named Einhard joined the court of Charlemagne, king of the Franks and future emperor, and stayed for 23 years. Around 830, he wrote a biography that remains one of the few first-hand accounts of a medieval ruler's private life. In it, he described how Charlemagne loved bathing in naturally heated springs so much that he chose to build his permanent capital at Aachen, specifically because of its thermal waters. The springs there had been prized since Roman times, named Aquae Grani, after a Celtic healing god. Charlemagne invited his sons, his nobles, his friends, and large numbers of his followers and bodyguards. Einhard records that on occasion, more than 100 people bathed together in the palace pools, a public, communal act at the very center of imperial life. And Charlemagne was far from the only ruler obsessed with bathing. Centuries later, Władysław Jagiello, the Grand Duke of Lithuania, was about to marry Jadwiga of Poland. But she was terrified he might be, as the court whispered, a hairy wild man from the pagan East. So Jagiello did something clever. He invited Jadwiga's trusted knight, Zawisza of Olesnica, to join him in the bathhouse. Zawisza saw the Duke unclothed, reported back that the man was perfectly civilized, and the marriage went ahead. The 15th century historian Jan Długosz recorded the episode, and it tells you something about how seriously medieval people took the bathhouse. It could change the course of a royal marriage. All of this, the infrastructure, the medical services, the royal culture, raises a question you probably have not considered. Did medieval physicians actually understand why cleanliness mattered? The answer is yes, and the evidence goes further than you would think. In southern Italy, the medical school of Salerno had been teaching physicians since the 9th century, one of the oldest in Europe. Sometime in the 12th or 13th century, someone at that school composed a poem. Not a prayer, not a hymn. A medical manual written in rhyming Latin verse so students could memorize it. It was called the Regimen Sanitatis Salernitanum, and it ran to over 360 verses. It covered diet, sleep, exercise, wine, and hygiene. It advised washing your hands and face with cold water every morning. It told you to stay warm after a bath. By the time the printing press arrived, it had been translated into nearly every European language, with close to 40 editions circulating before the year 1501. This was not folk wisdom passed down by grandmothers. It was curriculum, and Salerno produced more than poems. In the 12th century, a physician known as Trotta practiced and taught at the school. one of the few documented female medical practitioners of the medieval period. Among the texts associated with her is De Ornatu Mulierum on women's cosmetics, a practical guide covering skincare, hair treatments, and hygiene recipes. One recommendation called for scrubbing away sweat with cloths dipped in wine boiled with bilberries. Another drew on cosmetic techniques borrowed from Muslim women in Sicily, including depilatories and scented rinses. These were not guesses. They were formulations, tested and refined, written down so others could replicate them. Behind all of it was a medical framework that took bathing seriously. Medieval physicians inherited the Galenic theory of the four humors: blood, phlegm, yellow bile, and black bile, each needing to stay in balance for the body to stay healthy. Bathing, sweating, and cupping were tools for adjusting that balance. A steam bath opened the pores and released excess moisture. Cupping drew corrupted blood to the surface. Even the soap people used had a logic to it. Made from animal fat mixed with lye, an alkali derived from wood ash. In Bristol, archaeologists excavating a 15th century site at Redcliffe Quarter found a lump of saponified fat, animal fat already partway through the chemical process of becoming soap. Soap making was documented in that city from the late 1400s onward, and the excavation confirmed it was not just a written record. It was an industry with physical remains in the ground. So if medieval people had the bathhouses, the medical theory, the soap, the guild regulations, the royal enthusiasm, and the infrastructure to support all of it, what went wrong? Why does everyone think they were filthy? Because something killed the bathhouses, and it happened fast. In the late 1400s, a disease began tearing through Europe that no one had seen before. Syphilis spread rapidly, and it spread in part through exactly the kind of intimate contact that bathhouses had tolerated for centuries. Mixed bathing, sexual encounters, shared water. Within a generation, the public bathhouse went from community institution to public health threat. The Dutch philosopher Erasmus, writing in 1526, described the collapse in a single sentence. 25 years earlier, he said, public baths had been the most fashionable thing in Brabant. Now, there were none. The new disease had taught people to avoid them. And that fear did not just close the bathhouses, it rewired the culture. Household inventories from the 16th and 17th centuries show bathing accessories gradually disappearing from wealthy homes. The Elizabethan era embraced the idea that washing weakened the body, that water opened the skin to infection. Physicians in the Renaissance, not the Middle Ages, told their patients to stop bathing. The linen shirt replaced the bath, perfume replaced soap, and the bathhouse, which had been as common as the bakery for 500 years, vanished from European life until the spa revival of the 18th century. The filth that we associate with the medieval world, it belongs to the centuries that came after. So the next time someone tells you medieval people were filthy, remember the full picture. An entire continent of public bathhouses, over 30 in Paris alone, 18 across the Thames, more in some German towns than churches. Barber surgeons performing medical procedures between the steam and the shave. A school in southern Italy writing hygiene manuals in rhyming verse. An emperor who built his capital around a pool. And a culture that only collapsed when a new disease made people too afraid to walk through the door. That crier in 12th century Paris shouting before dawn that the baths were ready. He was not calling people to something strange. He was calling them to something as ordinary as breakfast. We just forgot. What else do you think we have gotten completely wrong about the Middle Ages? If you enjoyed this story, subscribe. There are plenty more where this came from. See you in the next one.